Hello, everybody. We are going to look at gerundives and what's called the passive periphrastic. Okay, so if we're looking at this stage or at this page rather from the language index in your Unit 4 Cambridge book, we see a couple examples where we have a gerundive. So ida fecunda is the gerundive, and we know that because it's got that nd there. Okay, when we form the gerundive, or when we pair the gerundive, maybe I should say that, with a form of the verb to be, we have what collectively is called a passive periphrastic. Okay, your book actually calls this a gerundive of obligation, but I have to be honest that very few other places, textbooks, etc., call it that. It's a passive periphrastic. The reason that we're learning this, the reason that's important, is because this is how the Romans would communicate things like not something is done or was done or should be done, but must be done. All right. Now, here's the deal. With the passive periphrastic, ida fecunda est is the passive periphrastic. We have the gerundive plus the verb to be. We're going to say, and now let's ignore this translation for a second. The literal translation of that Latin sentence with the passive periphrastic is a house must be built by us. Okay, so passive periphrastic, so must be blanked. Okay, and then this word nobis here is in the dative case, but it's a special use of the dative. It's called the dative of agent. It's the only time that dative is ever used with agent, at least that we know so far. There's one exception that you don't have to worry about. But with the passive periphrastic, we have a dative of agent. So the house must be built by us. Now, probably the smoother way of saying that is we must build the house, or we must build a house, is what they've said here. So the translation here has flipped it from the passive to the active, and sometimes you just you need to do that because it just sounds better. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at this one. Consistendum is the gerundive. Then we have the form of the verb to be. This time it's in the future, so this is why we're saying will. Now, you can't say in English like will must be blanked. That doesn't make any sense. So it's the best equivalent here is like will have to be blanked by the soldiers, or the soldiers will have to here take a stand or halt or stop. Okay. Now let's look at our examples here. I want you to pick out the gerund, just the gerund in number 1. All right, you're right. Emendi is the gerund. Okay. Now, what do we call the gerundive? I'm sorry, I think I called it the gerund earlier, but the gerundive plus the verb to be. That's right, that's called a passive periphrastic. Okay, so now the big thing here is how do we translate this? And I'll give you a couple choices, but how do we translate tibi, novi, vestes, emendi, sunt? Okay, so the new clothes must be bought by you. Now, what's a better way of saying that? Can we flip that to the active just like we did up here? Yeah, right. So you must buy the new clothes. Okay, let's try B here. Pecunia redenda est. All right, so hopefully we said the money must be returned, or maybe somebody must return the money. We don't know who that person is, so I think we just need to keep it in the passive there. The money must be returned, must be given back. Let's look at tell you what, let's look at E here. Okay, now first of all, identify the passive periphrastic in E. Okay, that's right. So faciendum, the gerundive, plus the verb to be. So faciendum erat. Now, notice I'll tell you erat is the imperfect of the verb to be. So what we're going to do here, instead of saying must, we're going to say had to. Okay, so let's keep that in mind and see if we can translate. Facio facere means to make. And with erat, we're going to change that passive periphrastic translation to had to. So let's see if we can translate that sentence now. Okay, so a long journey had to be made by me, or I had to make a long journey. Okay, hope that helps everybody.